We have Gabe Yanez, GY. We have MDV, Matt De La Valle, and me, Jason Khalipa, on the show today. We are talking about America is going sober, and the question is, should you? And Gabe actually sent us over this Instagram kind of like statistic that was going back and forth, and I found that was the most interesting to me is that, and I quote, new data has just dropped. Only 54% of Americans now drink alcohol, the lowest rate in 90 years. And so the question becomes, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? And yeah, so Liz popped it up on the screen here. And I think this is a really good conversation because if you look at the statistics, and I'll let Gabe kind of dive into those, and then we'll talk about some of the comments and how it's not all like rainbows and unicorns about this. So Gabe, you sent it over. Let's dive in. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, man. Yeah, no, it was interesting to see. This is something we've talked about a little bit in the past. I know that we brought up in the past the fact that like especially younger generations, like Gen Z, tends to be like, not into drinking and alcohol at all, but there's this interesting kind of counterpoint to that, and it's not maybe because they're doing it purely for health reasons, but just like they're not going out as much, right? Like they're not socializing. They're indoors and not going out to the bars and stuff like maybe we did when we were younger, that led to a lot of this drinking. But to like answer your question directly, and yeah, the statistics, if you go back just a few years, even as early as 2021, just 4 years ago, that percentage was 67% drank regularly. In 23, 62. In 24, 54. So a 13-point drop in just 3 years is pretty significant when you're talking about those numbers. And then it goes into, again, the age demographic, young adults, women actually leading the charge in drinking a lot less, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't thought so much about like what the women to male split of this kind of new trend would be, but that was interesting. But anyway, my take, and then I'll pitch it over to you, Jay, is of course this is a good thing. Like I've been very vocal about this, and anecdotally have experienced it myself. I think that they're just, I get the whole like social aspect and the fact that you can quote unquote find moderation. But I think that, dude, a lot of people are doing this to feel included or just because it's kind of like the way things have been. I don't necessarily think that as many people as think that they like genuinely enjoy and that it's like a worthwhile thing to include, actually genuinely enjoy maybe as much as they think, or haven't had the chance to experience the social settings, the situations without it, and realize that it's pretty much the same, like except maybe you don't wake up the next morning feeling pretty trashy. So I'll caveat this with, obviously the interesting thing about this is that it's hitting an all-time low past 90 years. But if you take a step back and look at health trends in general, people are a lot unhealthier. But this is one of those things where two things can be true at once. Like at the same time, we're a lot more sedentary. We're eating a lot worse foods. We're incredibly disconnected. People are very, very, they're finding other ways to kind of numb and deal with things that maybe not, may not be alcohol, but are worse. But does that mean that alcohol is a good thing and that like less people drinking is a bad thing? No, it just means that there are other things that are kind of like taking the place. Yeah. But to me, just to answer the question very bluntly, like, is it a good thing that less people are drinking? Yes. Should you? I mean, that's a tough thing to say because everyone has to make these decisions on their own. But I do think that if you're not like 100% satisfied with where you are in terms of how you feel, in terms of body composition, it's a great thing to just cut out and see what that does for you. Maybe it does nothing. Maybe you cut it out for 30, 45 days and you're like, hey, that wasn't the thing that made a big difference. My social situations are lacking. Like I'm not connecting with my spouse the way I used to. Maybe that's what the conclusion you come to after 30, 45 days. But I think anyone that isn't where they want to be owes it to themselves to pull that lever and see what it does for them. That's kind of my take.
Dude, so I completely agree with what you just said. Like if you're sitting out there and you're not physically where you want to be or mentally where you want to be, pull it out and then reintroduce it the way you want. I want to bring up the first comment on this post I found to be particularly compelling, and then obviously MDV I want to talk
Yeah,
to you.
I just want to comment one thing really quickly. I don't think that we
Yeah,
can like extrapolate the reasons about like people's own dissatisfaction with like whether or not they enjoy drinking or not. I think that
sure.
that's a bridge too far. I don't think that we can say based on our own experiences that like, oh, if you're drinking and you don't know how much fun you're not having, whatever. Like I think that there's also a level of personal freedom involved in this, and obviously people can make their own choices. I don't view drinking as being a zero sum game. I do think that it's part of life. It exists out there. It also probably inarguably changed humanity in the way that it was introduced. There's been a bunch of studies that have been done by what are those guys? Not paleontologists. I forget. Somebody was on Rogan a while back and was talking about this. But I also think that it's made a lot of things in life different or easier, or something that is vilified because it gets taken very, very far. And I think you can take anything very far. I'm not advocating for people to pick up drinking if you don't do it. I'm just saying that there's also personal liberties and freedoms involved in this, and that, if you're of age and you want to make decisions for yourself that involve going out there and having a beer with your friends, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if you're somebody who's looking at your life and you're saying that, yeah, I'm not where I'm at, I'm drinking too much, I don't feel great, then yeah, maybe of course you should address these types of things. But I do have an issue with saying like nobody should drink. I don't think that that's a statement that I could make, because I think that you do have the ability and the right to do whatever you want, and my opinion doesn't really
Well,
matter about
it's
that.
an old school thing, dude. I mean, I've been reading the Bible every morning, and obviously wine gets brought up there regularly. I mean, we're talking about so many years
I think
as
it was
a
Michael Pollan, by the way, who was on
on
the
Rogan.
Rogan show. Yeah,
Yeah.
Michael Pollan.
I just think this just to go to the first comment on this post is like, while I love this trend to basically back up what Gabe is saying, is how telling are these statistics really is the question mark, right? Like, okay, alcohol consumption's down, but depression rates are rising, screen time is out of control. So is the drop in drinking really about choosing health, or more about the lack of real social interaction, more people choosing to scroll at home instead of going out and connecting face to face? And I think that obviously you could talk about there's other things, marijuana in many states, if I'm not mistaken, even no, many states, not all of them, it has been legalized, right? You have the increase in mushrooms, you have the increase in a variety of other things. So like, is it just like this tagline that's going out there? Is it look, I think that a reduction is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that, but I think that you have to pull back the curtain and look at other statistics as well. And I think that a major problem, dude, is that you have a lot of people who are literally behind a screen and never exposing themselves to personal interactions. And like, dude, I can make the argument that's even worse. I mean, time will only tell what happens with this next generation, but they're living in a fantasy world instead of actually connecting with other people. I'm not saying they have to connect with other people through alcohol, but the fact that they're staying at home and not going out, that's a big problem, dude. So I just thought that first comment was really telling, and I think it's something we should discuss. Um,
I'm a little curious too about like whether or not first of all, I think the polling, you have to be a little bit not suspect, but you have to look at how these numbers were polled. I mean, we saw in the 2025 election, no matter which way you lean, that the polling was dramatically wrong. It was not right. I don't think that the polling for a lot of the different candidates was correct. And sometimes you can ask segments or groups of people and get the data that you want out of these types of polls. Have you guys ever answered a Gallup poll? Has the phone ever rang for you and picked up and been like, hey, this is what I'm doing? I don't know anybody who has.
Dude,
And
have you, by the way, not to go off on a quick tangent, but did you know that people get hired to go and protest? Did you know that?
yes, agent
Dude,
provocateurs, bro.
it blew my mind that there's actually companies out there who hire people to go and protest things. Like, I just could not. The guy was on, I think it was on Fox or whatever it was. Like, he's literally saying, he's the CEO of the company, and he's saying like, yes, we hire people to go and protest. I almost like, blacked out. You know, I could not believe that. But
Well,
yeah.
let me just clarify something also, because I have a little bit of conflicting views on alcohol. It's something that I still consume. I drink a glass of wine or 2 glasses of wine, a week or every couple of weeks. I've been drinking the non-alcoholic athletic brews quite a bit because I enjoy the taste. I think that it's something that I do like the IPA taste that athletic brew's been able to replicate. I do think that alcohol can be extremely destructive, probably more destructive to the family unit and to individuals than nearly anything else. I mean, substances in general, narcotic substances, but alcohol is one of these things that really can terrorize and tear a family apart and tear a family down. And I think that that's obviously something that needs to be addressed and remedied and looked at and certainly handled both by individuals and intervention and families and people need to step in and help, bring people to shore who are drowning in alcohol. But I also don't think that, somebody enjoying a glass of wine, every couple of weeks or every week, or if they enjoy the taste or if they're out there and they have a good time and allows them to be a little bit more of I don't want to say looser version of themselves, but maybe a more relaxed version of themselves where they can kind of shed some of the social anxieties that they might have. And I'm not saying that it's a solution for everybody, but it certainly does help. And I think that there are some positives to drinking. I'm not saying that it's all positives. There's a lot of negatives. But I don't subscribe to the view that nobody should drink, and I think that that's an awfully unrealistic viewpoint. I'm not saying that, Gabe, you're taking that, but I do think that it's an unrealistic view to say that nobody should ever have alcohol or interact with alcohol ever in their lives. And I think that also might set kids up for weird experiences when they're exposed to it. If they never have interacted with it before they get to the place of age that they interact with it for the first time.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a strange scenario, but I'm interested in these numbers. I'm interested in the comments too. The comments were really interesting on this post.
I agree with the numbers. Any poll you can look at, and if you dive into like how those numbers were pulled, you can always make an argument for, well, is this really telling the truth? But I think that we can all agree that the NA space booming is for a reason, right? Like the fact that now you can even find bars that are like fully non-alcoholic, like this trend is pretty real. Like whether those are the exact numbers of, people choosing not to drink and that percentage going up is exactly what these numbers are.
Agree.
I think we can all agree that just like less people are drinking and definitely less young people are drinking. And yeah,
Feels
like
like
to
that.
your point, MDB, I don't have the position at all that nobody should ever drink. I think that a lot of people would get a lot out of having a really honest conversation with themselves about why they're doing it. Because, and I can speak to this anecdotally from my experience and now being 3 years sober, but also a lot of the guys that this year I've worked with that I don't think I have a single guy that I've worked with on nutrition and just feeling better that has gone from drinking to not drinking, because that's not the goal and that's not like what I push because I don't think it's necessary. But what they have done is taking it out, and they've all had in different ways, shapes, or forms the same experience that I had, which, hey, I thought that I would be the weird guy at a reunion. I thought that, like I wouldn't be as much fun. I thought that I couldn't hang out with my college friends and have a good time. And they've all had like unanimously the experience of like, it's much more built up in my head than it is actually in reality. And that I think is something that I highly encourage everyone to experience, because once you figure that out, you might not come back to being zero. And I don't think that even needs to be the case, but you'll come back to a level that I think is just plain and simple, a lot healthier, period, without having to sacrifice any of the, benefits of, it elevating social situations and the connection. Like if that's something that's important to you and your circle of friends and you found a moderation there, great. Not telling you to change a thing. But I think that a lot of times there is a level of excess that happens
For sure.
purely because of like this story we tell ourselves that like, well, like if I don't drink here, then they're going to think this, or like, then I'm this, then I'm that. And I'm telling you, all that is just 100% something that you build up in most cases.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I would agree with that for sure. I think also, we've kind of all reached an age, mid 30s, 40s now, that like I think that our decision making and maybe the way that we stand on our decisions and our morals or values or ethics or whatever, I don't think that we're as swayed by some of the peer pressure that might have existed when we were younger. And I do think that there's certainly more acceptance of people who are abstaining from drinking and not drinking at events and whatever. And I don't think that it's a weird thing at all. I think that that's also venue, that's age, that's timing. Culturally, we do see this trend happening. The interesting thing about a lot of the comments, though, is that like a lot of the people are indicating that these kids, these younger individuals, are switching to vaping and
Vaping. Yeah.
THC and THC drinks and those types of things as opposed to alcohol. And I'm not saying that they're subbing a negative with a negative, not at all. But what do you guys think about that? I mean, everybody who I see, I've never used a vape, a nicotine vape in my life, so I don't know what those are all about. But nearly every young person I see, and I'm going to date myself here by sounding super old, is vaping a lot. I mean, I see vapes all the time. They're everywhere. They're on the ground. It's garbage. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, just to clarify, with the vaping, you could be vaping nicotine or THC
THC.
or a variety of, I'm sure, other things. But I do think one important topic to bring up, and I'll get back to the vaping thing, because in my experience, it hasn't been as prevalent. But then again, my kids are 14 and 11, so I'm sure that's gonna be more prevalent in high school. I haven't seen it in high school yet, but I do think from a parenting perspective, one of the things I think has been unique for us is that I think that we've done a good job showing our children balance, in my opinion. I think that we're not too far one way or too far the other way. So like we're not going out to a party. Dude, our kids are at events all the time. They see all kinds of stuff. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because like there's been times where I've reflected on this and said, "Ooh, is this a bad? Ooh, maybe they shouldn't be at this event." But I think exposing them the right way, dude, the reality is they're going to be exposed at some point, whether it's in high school or in college, and having them recognize like, this balancing act, I think is really important for them to see, even with parents, right? Where you could have some where you could have two drinks and be fine. Or all I'm trying to say is I think from a parenting perspective, I think it's important for us. Like if neither one of us, Ashley and I, and we were around everybody who's sober, is that a good thing? Okay, sure. But then if they get exposed to it, they won't have that connection. How do we then educate them on what that would look like? And vice versa. If you're around people that are just getting crazy, that's not good either. But I think showing them that you could have this moderation idea, that you could be under control and stuff, has been something that we've, I guess, shown without talking about by just being able to go to dinner and have a glass of wine and not get crazy. So that's something else that I've been reflecting on is like, how do we instill this idea that like there's a balance in that we're not saying don't, but we are saying that if you do, always keep it in moderation and never get out of control. So that's something that we think about a lot as the kids are getting older. Back to the vaping thing, and then we could talk about the kid thing more
But
too.
but
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that you're saying this, Jay, but you don't have to drink to teach your kids that. Like you don't,
Th- that's
like
that's true.
we have family get-togethers all the time, and our parents always have wine,
Perfect example.
and we don't, we would obviously never talk about it in any sense of like, you see how your grandparents drink wine, like you shouldn't do that. Like absolutely not. It's just our preference not to do it, and never making it seem like this very heavy thing that is like you're not allowed to do it, you can't do it. Like some
Right.
people choose to do it. Like your grandparents are like perfectly like, they're perfectly balanced and they approach it with moderation and it's part of their customs for a long time and they really enjoy it. That's great. So I'm not saying that you're saying this, but I do want to make it very clear that like you can impart that on your kids. You don't have to do the thing.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the bigger thing I'm trying to explain is like we've been exposing them since an early age to just going out and then allowing there to be learning experiences through that process that they're not like shocked by it if they get to like I think that whole idea of like just like not having them involved in anything until they get to college, and all of a sudden they get there and you hear these stories of just people going crazy. And yeah, Gabe, like you said, you could have that exposure of a variety of ways, right? It doesn't have to be from your parents, but that's something we've chosen to do is that we take them with us to adult parties, and they're also at an age where it makes sense. And it's just been a part of like they've seen it over the years, and I think we have opportunities to educate as things come up at those events, which have been helpful for us because there could be teaching moments there for us.
Have you ever had an opportunity where you are at some of these parties and someone, not you obviously, like goes out of hand, and what's the teaching moment there and what does the conversation look like?
I think over the years, you'll see those you'll see those things come up, and we don't even necessarily even need to say anything anymore. Like they recognize that person went a little bit too far, and they might say something like the next day, like, "Hey, dude, that guy was pretty wasted," and then we'll be like, "Yeah, like we're not gonna like shame anybody. We're not gonna say anything. Just be like, hey, like they at least can recognize it. They can see the behavior." And it's interesting because as the kids grow up and they're around these behaviors, they start to identify like, hey, if I do drink too much, maybe I will be acting in a way that I'm not gonna, I won't like, because they're seeing it. Like, I just think that obviously we're not there. There's levels to this. There's a bunch of nuance. The point I'm trying to make is that we try and at least not shelter them so much that we never let them see anybody doing these things. And then also at the same time, dude, we're just having them at parties, having a good time. But I think that we talk about it in a way that's like, hey, like, dude, go out, have a good time, but just remind yourself to be in moderation. Like, that's it. That's the way we try and discuss it. And sometimes people go too far, and then there's an opportunity to discuss that too, And it's never perfect, and there's a bunch of nuance with that, of course,
I think, one of the things also to recognize about having this conversation through a fitness lens is that the decisions that you make after drinking more than a couple of drinks, 2 or 3 or 4, whatever that is. Same deal with THC. I mean, if you're smoking certain types of THC or consuming edibles, the food decisions that you might be making, or the decisions that you might make lifestyle-wise or whatever, you're in a compromised state. It's inarguable that you're making decisions with some substances in your body at that point that might be pulling you in a direction of, hey, let's order that late night pizza, or let's eat that sleeve of Oreos, or let's, do whatever. I think that that's also a big aspect of this, that the consequences of, from a fitness perspective, of having these things ingrained in your life and getting to the point where you don't have control over maybe the decisions that you're making, or you get a little too loose, that the food decisions become a big issue in terms of, caloric weight added to your week if you're doing that once, twice, multiple times per week.
If you're using Gabe's like a pie graph that he made, you'd have a
charts over there.
You'd have a big spike on a Saturday. Hey, but just to and by the way, MDV, just to kind of, my position on this is really simple. Like, dude, Ash and I, we go out all the time. We have a great time. We're doing our thing, but I don't allow my nights to affect my mornings. That's it. Every Saturday, I'm up at early to get the men's club ready, and that's a commitment that I have. So if I stay up till midnight or 1 o'clock or whatever it is, and we're out, like, that's cool. Like, I'm gonna go have a great time, but it's not gonna change the fact that in the morning I'm gonna get up early. I'm gonna go train hard. So that's where I stand on this. Is like, I'm gonna go out. We're gonna go do our thing. Like, Ash and I are gonna go see Pitbull like in a couple of weeks in Vegas. Dude, we're gonna be out super late, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm gonna get up early. I'm gonna go train, and that's the way I look at these things. So I don't want my nights to affect my mornings.
Yeah, I guess what would be the litmus test in terms of, like, if people are considering, whether or not alcohol is really impacting them negatively, what would be some of the signs, or I don't want to say symptoms, but what would be some of the indicators that you might need to take a look at this? Is this something you feel compelled to do? Is it a compulsion? Is it excess? I
think it's super, super simple, man. It's an elimination diet. You got to cut it out. You can't know how it feels unless you cut it out for at least 30 days. And if you hear that and there's a big hesitation to taking that step, I think that tells you a lot too.
So let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
So somebody who drinks 1 or 2 glasses of wine a week with their loved one across the table, and it's something that they enjoy, whatever the drink is, whatever. I'm not saying it has to be wine. It could be beer.
It could be mezcal. I'm a mezcal guy.
It could be mezcal.
Yep.
You'd say that if that's the only thing that they're doing, you'd say that person still owes it to themselves to take it out of their diet for 30 days?
For sure. I mean, so if it is just once a week, very low, then it should also be a super low barrier. Like, you're hardly cutting anything out, right?
But why?
And
why if it brings enjoyment to somebody's life, or it brings enjoyment to a meal or a connection or something like that? Why would you ask that person to remove it?
So to take a step back, if you're like 100%, like, I feel energy-wise body composition wise, relationship with my wife wise, like all of those things are like at a 10 out of 10, then sure, you don't have to change anything. I think that even in the example that you're saying, someone that's convinced that like, hey, elevates the experience, like adds enjoyment, all of those things, who knows? You spend 30 days and you spend that same weekly date night with your wife and cut this thing out. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And there's at least a chance there that you might realize that I had just as much fun and connected just as much with my wife. And I got a little bit better sleep and woke up on Sunday morning and showed up better for my kids. That just might be a possibility. It also might not. It might be that 30 days later, you're like, hey, our dates weren't as fulfilling. We didn't have as much fun, really missed that. And it didn't impact anything else. And like, it was 4 weekends. You gave up 4 weekends of this thing that you quote unquote, really enjoy and really elevates. And now you know that you have found true moderation. And that's awesome. Now you know that you can continue and don't have to change a thing. Mm-hmm. But I think the fact that there's even a 10% chance that you might find that those special moments could be just as special, if not more special, and then you just feel better the next day, I think it's just worth it. Like, I can't see why it wouldn't be.
A follow-up question really quickly. So if I looked at somebody who was
sounds like a lawyer right there,
eating ice cream multiple times per week, and it was adding enjoyment to their life, and I said, or whatever dessert, Oreos, whatever, and I said, hey, you should focus on the quality of your nutrition and remove the sugar from your diet, because it looks like you might be, the hesitation that you have to removing this from your diet is indicative of the fact that you might have an issue. What would your stance on that be? Is that the same thing? Is it different? Is it different because it's alcohol? What's the stance on that?
I think it's different just because like you have to eat, and
you don't have to,
like,
but you don't have to eat ice cream, and you don't have to eat junk food. You don't have to eat that stuff.
Okay, I mean, if it's, again, I think the same thing applies, right? Like if you are just not satisfied with your body composition, how you feel energy-wise, it's another lever that you can pull. So you should try it.
Which one would you pull for? I'm curious because we have slightly different takes on this, and I'd be interested to see, like, if you had somebody who was drinking a couple of glasses of wine per week and then having a couple of servings or whatever it is, multiple servings of dessert at the end of the day, which lever would you pull first with that person? Does it depend?
It depends, because I do think that there's something to be said about, like, and maybe it's just because I haven't drank in a while, but I remember when I did, and a big reason I cut it out is because I just didn't feel good, even if it was a small amount. Maybe that's not the case for the person. Like, I'll have ice cream at night and like, I'll be fine. Like, it won't impact me in any way. And I've also gone, and I've gone periods.
So if I did the same thing, it would impact me, right?
For you because of the lactose?
Yeah, so like if I go and have ice cream, a bunch of like whatever, then like it's worse.
But then we're talking about like,
yeah, of course.
But then we're talking about like actually having like an adverse reaction to it. Obviously, you should. If we're just talking about like nutrition quality conversation, like, the dose makes the poison with these things, and that alcohol is just different than a food. Period. Like those are kind of apples and oranges to me.
I would agree with that final statement that the dose does make the poison for sure.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, right? It's like people are adults. They need to make their own decisions. They need to see what makes them feel. They want to, you want to make the decisions to feel the way you want to feel. And like for me, dude, as of lately, I'm really working on not eating late. Dude, when I eat late, like last night, I had this parent-student athlete meeting it's just, as the kids have gotten older, there's a lot of meetings that happen. So I didn't get home until 8:30, and I go to bed at 9:15. So I'm like, oh, damn. So, but that's a situation where I used to eat like still the same amount and then go to bed, and I wouldn't sleep at all. So last night I just had to have some self-control and just reduce the consumption. So that's an example, right? Everybody just kind of has to find what that is for them. But I think to summarize the alcohol conversation, like, I do think it's really interesting when you compare like desserts and alcohol and things like that. And I think, Gabe, like, dude, I do agree with your take in the sense that like, you don't know what you don't know. Like, I've taken it out multiple times. And so I feel like I know what I know now, and I could lean on that. I think that if someone doesn't know what they don't know and they haven't done it, they should at least owe it to themselves to try and explore it. It'd be the same idea if you feel like shit and you want to start taking out maybe some gluten and see how your body feels. Or if you feel like crap and you want, do this and see how your body feels. It's a similar idea. It's like your body's your laboratory. Start playing around with different things and see how you feel. And if you feel better, keep doing it. If you feel the same, then, go from there. That's it. Right? And I do want to talk about the wrestler, and I know that we want to talk about the wrestler, dude. That's Rampage's son, right?
Yeah. So there was an incident that happened at a professional wrestling promotion, which Raja Jackson, who's Quentin Rampage Jackson's son. Rampage Jackson was a former UFC fighter. I think he was the champion at one time in the division that he was fighting in. I don't know if his son was part of the promotion or just a guest, but he was clearly not a professional wrestler. And there was an interaction that happened before the event where this guy, Psycho, I think his name was Psycho Sid. I forget his name. Anyway, the wrestler hits Raja Jackson in the head with a beer can prior to the event. And it's a very tense and strange interaction. And then
they have it on video too, MDV?
It's all on. This is the interesting part about this whole scenario, is that nearly every aspect of it is caught on video. So you have this interaction where the beer can is smashed on Raja Jackson's head. Then there's some footage that just released of another wrestler backstage telling Raja Jackson to make sure that guy gets his receipt, to essentially make sure that he feels, something from that interaction, because it was clearly not kosher what happened. It didn't look like part of the act. What happens in the ring is extremely brutal. So Raja Jackson, very strong, athletic individual, slams this guy basically on his head, knocks him out, and then there's about 20 unanswered haymakers that just get delivered directly to this guy's head while he's on the ground.
Yeah, and he's out. He's clearly out.
He's out. He's out. He's out. He's out. He's out. And it's all on film. So one of the things that's, I think, going to happen is it looks like they're investigating this. I think this happened in Los Angeles. I think LA County's investigating it. And I don't even know if it matters whether or not the guy, if he wakes up, I don't know if he's woken up yet, but he was out in a coma for a while.
Liz might be able to look it up, but I think he's doing better now, if I'm not mistaken. I was talking to Danny about it this morning.
I don't know whether or not it even matters whether this guy says he's going to press charges or not, because of how violent this was and how I think the state's going to step in and probably arrest this guy. And I don't really think that there's probably any excuse whether or not you got out of control or whether or not you thought it was part of the act or whatever. But there's other layers to this. There's mental health layers to this that have come out. I've seen some conversations about that. But overall, just like an extremely strange and violent interaction in a professional wrestling ring that is very difficult to watch. And a lot of people are talking about it right now. And I think it's going to be a sad ending for somebody who was a very young individual who had maybe a bright future or a lot of things ahead of them, that you could probably either get aggravated assault or attempted murder charges based on this.
Yeah, I saw people saying attempted murder. I don't know. It's really, I just saw the clip of the actual event. And it is a little odd because, in the quote unquote professional wrestling, right, WWE style, this wasn't WWE. This is like another.
It's a lower level production.
Yeah. Obviously they look like they're hitting each other, but they're not. And you could totally tell that they're not hitting each other, but they're kind of getting close. In this case, the guy just basically tackles him, takes him off the whatever, boom, slams his head, and he's already out. And the strikes were just so aggressive.
If this was a UFC fight, Jay, it would have been ended with the slam. They would have tackled him off of the other athlete after maybe one punch to the unconscious fighter.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what happens is that the referee does not go to tackle Raja Jackson off of the professional wrestler. It takes 30 or 45 seconds before 4 or 5 other professional wrestlers run into the ring and pin this guy into the corner. And if you've ever seen a UFC fight where some of the referees stop the fight when somebody gets knocked out, they pretty much physically tackle the other fighter and get him off of the person because they're in they're in that trance, they're in that zone. And this guy was in a trance, man. He was ready to really hurt this person. It's depressing.
I don't know if Liz can pull it up, but I mean,
I don't even know if we want to pull up.
We don't need to pull it up. It's fine. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll stay in touch with it. But it was brutal to watch, and it just goes to show, man, like, I mean,
mental health and emotional control are huge.
Mental health, emotional control, and also those guys, like, I don't envy the position of the other people in the ring and outside the ring because I mean, I'm sure they were able to tell very quickly that this was not because it's
called
not
a work. In professional wrestling, it would be called a work, where somebody takes a hit, kind of falsely takes the hit, right? Like, it looks like they're hitting them really hard. They're hitting them a little bit. They're not hitting them as hard. That's like a work. This was not a work. This was pretty much an attack. Professional wrestling is brutal, though.
Brutal.
You ever get a chance to talk to like Seth Rollins or, man, I saw Seth Rollins one time back in Boston after I think it was a Hell in a Cell event, and his body was just destroyed. He was destroyed. I mean, he was hit hard by slaps, by punches, by kicks, and to say they don't really get hit, I think is a little bit of like a misnomer.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
They take so much. They take so much punishment in the ring. It's crazy. I can't imagine how these guys walk around. They must feel like they got hit by a car every day.
There's nothing fake about like the jumps they're doing, the fact that they're landing on something that, sure, there's some bounce to that stage, but it's not like it's, those cushions in a gymnastics gym. Like, you're landing on a hard surface.
Dude, remember I told you, Gabe, we had Colby, that's Seth Rollins' real name, on the show, and he invited me. We went to Levi Stadium. I went to my first ever WrestleMania, and I'll never forget. I had never been to a wrestling match, and WrestleMania is like the Super Bowl of wrestling. And we were sitting there like really close, and they had a ladder match. You ever seen a ladder match, MDV? Like, do you know what those are? So these guys like climb the ladders, and they're hitting each other with the ladder. And it's like, dude, I don't care how fake it is. Those guys were getting messed up.
Yeah. Professional wrestling is such an interesting industry. The blend of athleticism and entertainment, the storylines. It's kind of like Broadway. It's like physical Broadway almost. There's characters, there's storylines, and everybody is usually in on it. Everybody. The cameraman, the referee, the people on the side of the ring. It's a very complex network of like information and communication going through the event. But what happened in the ring with Rampage Jackson's son was like completely. I saw a wrestling historian post that it was the worst thing that he's ever seen in the ring. And there's some bad stuff that has happened in the ring before, for sure.
Oh,
yeah.
Pretty
bad. Man. Pretty bad. But that's what's going on. I'm sure you guys are seeing it out there on social because it's being talked about really heavily in the MMA circles and because it involves Rampage's son.
Dude. Well, on a
yes, let's try to bring this up a little bit.
On a brighter note, women's sports in California are on an all-time high. Last night I'm at this athletic event, and they're saying that one of the, I don't know if it was basketball or one of the sports teams in the Bay Area set the record for the most amount of attendance in a female like that they had ever seen before. And so it looks like female sports are growing. Caitlin Clark, I think, is having an impact on that, along with several other women. But obviously, I'm at an all-girls school. My daughter goes to an all-girls school, so they're talking about where sports are going for women. The athletic director then navigates into youth sports as a whole and what the conversation is going. And it's exactly what we talked about on the show. It was crazy. Like he actually sent out a PDF to all the parents, which I'm going to read. I haven't read it yet, and I want to share it on the show, assuming it's insightful. But he goes into, the athletic director is talking about specialization, being a student athlete and all that kind of stuff, and where the youth sports have gone and where we need to go, and how he wants the school that my daughter goes to be spearheading this next evolution of like getting back on track for youth sports. It's all the stuff that we talk about. But last night, this guy's talking in front of a bunch of parents about it, which I thought was really timely. So
Was he advocating for more of like a broad, general, inclusive type of exposure to sport versus the extreme sports specialization?
yeah, that's exactly what he was advocating for camaraderie, sportsmanship, hard work, dedication, across multiple things, and not pigeonholing so much. And then what role do the parents play in this? And then talking about that kind of stuff. It was exactly what I would hope to hear from an athletic director, and it was awesome. I walked away like basically like I went and shook his hand like, hey man, that was great. Got me all pumped up. So it's good. It's good. It's spreading, man. The youth sports, it's spreading, and the pendulum's going to be at a good spot. I feel like very, very soon.
Did we mention
I
on
don't
this
know,
podcast that women's flag football is like the fastest growing women's
Yeah.
sport?
Dude, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Is it going to be in the next Olympics? Is that a
I don't
thing?
know.
Or am I like, I feel like I'm vaguely remembering the fact that flag football and then hopefully women's flag football is going to be in the next Olympics. But a good segue with women's sports, man, is what I think is like a really unfortunate line crossed in this conversation of weight loss drugs with Serena Williams, like now becoming the spokesperson.
Good segue, Gabe. Good segue.
I mean, it's a good segue because Serena Williams is the GOAT, man. Like
You're right.
you want to talk about like incredibly inspirational female athlete that like I think in many ways was one of the early pioneers. And then CrossFit did a good job at this too, of like empowering women to have like a different body that was very strong and wasn't like super small. And like she went out there and dominated with, not being the thinnest frame out there in a sport that does have that type of body type, right? Like she's largely seen as an icon in that space, both for women and like what like a strong body should look like. And so now, for her to be the face of Roe, which is one of these companies that does weight loss GLP-1 medications, and if you watch the ad for it, essentially saying that like, this is the medication my body needed to lose, the baby weight after having a baby. Man, I think we've crossed the line, dude. And it's super unfortunate because we talked about this a little bit at the end of another episode. Like I personally changed my tune on like just my take overall on these GLP-1s. I think that in the beginning, I had that like hard line, like that you kind of see a lot in the CrossFit space of like, you got to work on your habits first. And like, this medication is a shortcut. And, and seeing a lot of really, really captivating stories and even talking to some people that have used it, I think that there's absolutely a use case for people that have honestly, like given the circumstances that they've been in, have tried everything that they could or that they've been equipped to try to like get the ball moving in the right direction and have just time and time again hit a wall. And these medications can help them at least build the momentum or get to a weight where they can at least start to exercise a little bit more comfortably, start to build some of these habits. And I think that in that respect, these medications have been great for people that are so overweight that they just need some help. But Serena Williams is an athlete, dude. Serena Williams is not like a morbidly obese person that like needs something to like help spark some change. She's someone that arguably has like normalized the fact that like you don't have to be a rail thin woman to like be strong and be incredibly attractive. And for now, her to be like really normalizing the fact that like, hey, you can do this to lose the 20 pounds that you gained after having a baby. And I know that it always gets weird when like you're a guy talking about like how women should feel about whatever, but I do think that this is just, because for men too, it's just going to normalize the fact that like, oh, this is for everyone. This is for the guy that needs 20 pounds to lose, the girl that needs 30 pounds after a pregnancy. Like just Serena's doing it, you should do it too. And I think that like, and again, this all comes down to the incentives being money, which we talked about. Like, I'm sure Serena isn't doing this because she's like a big believer that this is like a, great thing for her. Sure, she's getting a pretty nice paycheck for it. But it's kind of, it's what we were saying that like, if you continue to go down this route, and you just want more people taking these things, this is eventually where it's going to get to. It's going to get to the point where like, you don't need to be the super obese person that's tried everything to benefit from this stuff. You could be anyone. You could be Serena Williams and you should take it. So It's unfortunate, man. I think it's unfortunate.
I wonder how much she got paid.
Well, first of all, I think Serena Williams, as an athlete, always performed at the highest level, always looked to be in shape, always showed up. I saw her at the Super Bowl when she did her appearance in Kendrick Lamar's halftime show. Looked incredible, still looks like an athlete. In the advertisement that she's got going for her, this medication that she's supporting, looks incredible. And that obviously it's my opinion and doesn't much matter in all these things. But the thing about it is maybe it really did help her, and maybe it really was the motivation she needed or the tool that she needed to get over this hump for her. I do see an issue though, Gabe, with kind of like what you're saying, where it's now so normalized to the point where, you have people who are trying to spot reduce fat or like need to get this last little couple of pounds off their body. And it could go to that place where it becomes like a body dysmorphic type of, use. And I still am of the belief that like, I think that it can be a tool for people, like we've said, who need to swim to shore. But you're pointing out something that I think definitely needs to be highlighted, where it's like, have we gone to a place where now we're like overcorrecting on the other side? And one of the things that I've noticed is that you have some celebrities who previously have been advocates of body positivity for years, have made very bold statements.
Was it Lizzo?
There's a bunch of people out there who have now showed up, much skinnier. And this is just anecdotally seeing certain celebrities show up skinnier. But the kind of hypocrisy there is a little bit head twisting for me, because I don't know how you can say a couple of years ago that body positivity is the thing that you stand behind, and I don't care if I'm overweight and this is who I am, and that's fine. You can. That can be who you are. But then to show up so extremely different looking and now be using medication to get you there is a very strange trade-off of values. It's very hard for me to not look at that as kind of hypocrisy in a certain way. And I know people's views can change on this kind of stuff, but the tone of how the conversation went a few years back before we had the sharp rise in Ozempic and GLP-1s was that being that shape and that size and those things was something that was not only acceptable, but also healthy in a lot of ways. And now you have this kind of sudden change where you can take a medication and it can very much help you get to a place where you're skinnier or have lost a significant amount of body fat due to better insulin sensitivity, appetite reduction, hormone balancing, whatever. It's kind of a very interesting trade-off there for me. And I don't feel fully comfortable with that, despite knowing that people's opinions can change. But when you're a celebrity, man, the weight of your words and what you say really matters, and it matters for a long time for a lot of people.
Well, and
So
like
what-
Lizzo, for example, comes up straight to mind because she really embodied this idea that like, hey, like this is who I am. I'm empowering women. And I think she drew a lot of women to her by feeling that same way. And then I think that she turned a lot of people off, not only from her fans, but also just like made them maybe reconsider the way they felt when she pivoted. And, look, she could do whatever she wants, right? But I think that as a celebrity or whatnot, like your words carry weight and you have power. And with that power comes great responsibility, right? Especially for young girls who are looking at this. And I think for Serena Williams, like she made her decision. And it's like, I just think that it's kind of like the online gambling conversation we've had where like, it's just access is just so readily available now that we're going to need to educate our youth on this. We're gonna have to educate ourselves on this and recognize the pros and the cons, but it's just, now it's going to be even more forward facing. I mean, dude, like, and that's for that, that's going to, a lot of this stuff is going to be more forward facing. I mean, dude, now with telehealth and TRT and dude, there's so much access now that we're going to have to educate ourselves, educate our kids, because where is it going to be 10 years from now? Like, and so I think all of this comes back to you, whether it's Serena Williams, whether it's this or that, how do we as parents make sure that we're creating good guardrails and educating our kids, because they're going to get hit with this stuff left and right, dude. And how do they decipher, okay, that's a tool that can be used versus, you know what I mean? Like, it's not there. It's a fine line on a lot of things, you know?
When something starts to be considered a cure-all
Yeah.
for whatever the thing is, then there's no downside. And I think that's how GLP-1s right now are really being perceived. And I only know enough to be dangerous. I know what I see out there, and the advertisements that I see and the way people are talking about them. It seems to be that this is the solution, the only solution that will get you to the place that you want to be. And I don't think that that's true. I think that it can help for sure. And I think for certain people that it's a great option, but there's also ways to do this where you don't include GLP-1s in the prescription for what you're going to be doing. And not to mention, like, this has popped up on my feed a couple of times. There's a $2 billion lawsuit that's going to be floating around, or 2,000 defendants right now.
What are they saying, MDV?
That there's side effects to these things that they weren't informed about. So, you know, I think that goes in the conversation with a bunch of things, but it's going to be interesting to see how the whole climate on this develops over the next 5 or 10 years. And Gabe, what's your like, what do you see? Like, the rise of this thing has been crazy. Like, it came out of nowhere almost. It's an old diabetes medication, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's a medication that's been around for a while to help insulin sensitivity with diabetes patients, I believe. Could be wrong. And it's been ported over to use for general weight loss for people who aren't diabetic.
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, when the incentive is financial, you need more people taking it for longer, and you need to find like cheaper versions of it, right? Like, those are all the levers you can pull if you're trying to make money. And if you have like the, you know, super cynical view of like, that's literally the North Star for all these pharma companies that are getting into the weight loss space, the end result is inevitable, right? Like, you have to now start recommending this for kids. You have to start recommending this for, even if you just have 10, 15, 20 pounds to lose. How do we get as many people as possible to become someone that this is a solution for, is the first thing you need to do. The second thing you need to do is try and hook them up for life. So there's no incentive to, hey, this could really help you get to a point where you're a little healthier, but let's also really work on nutrition. Let's work on fitness. Let's get you in a place where 3 months after using this, you don't have to use it anymore. That's actually the last thing that they want. So that's thing number 2 that has to happen. And then thing number 3, man, is like, how do we make the cheapest version of this? How do we skirt as many long-term trials to find any possible side effect that could happen, right? Like, how do you shortcut your way to not making this injectable, but making it a pill possibly? Like, those are the 3 ways where these companies turn, you know, I'm just coming up with numbers, $1 billion market into $1 trillion market.
For
so
sure.
If you pull that long enough, like, that's what's going to happen. It's going to be for everyone.
Yeah.
It's going to be something that like you kind of have to sign up for life, because there's no incentive to build the habits. And these things are going to get shadier and shadier. There's going to be companies that try and disrupt the space by coming up with a version of it that might not be as safe as like it should be. And yeah, man, it's not good. It's not good.
The fact that we have any trust in pharmaceutical companies besides the fact that they want to make money off of what they're selling is so strange. I mean, I think that it's so interesting in an industry that's been sued God knows how many times for how many countless hundreds of millions of dollars. And this script has been written over and over and over again. And the opioids is a fantastic example of this. You know, something that was created, and I don't the creation of it, but like marketing this as a way to reduce and get out of pain, a highly addictive medication that they knew was addictive, that they were selling in, you know, higher and higher dosages to people in low income area is crazy. It's like, I don't fully, I'm not like a full blown conspiracy theorist, but if you look at pharmaceutical companies and you don't think that they just want to make a buck off of you, I I think that you got to take a look and be like, whoa, what am I doing with these guys? And they always come across with like the most pure, with the purest types of intentions through all of their advertisements. It's crazy to me, man. It's crazy.
But all this comes back to just being an adult, man. I think it comes back to like, dude, we're going to continue to have this. It's going to continue to be this way.
Yeah.
In the next 10 years, there's going to be more medications that are going to come out. And dude, ultimately, people need to make their educated decision, right? And
yeah, but Jay, the problem is that a lot of these things, like the people that are going to get the shortest end of the stick are the people that need this stuff the most. Like if this stuff gets super expensive and out of hand and like the most inexpensive, easy to access versions of it are the least safe, like it's the person that actually needs the jump start to make a change that gets the short end of the stick. And for those people, the decision is made for them. And that's the unfortunate part. Like I don't like this whole like, hey, we're all just adults and we got to educate ourselves. I think that like these trends have very real impacts on people where the decision is taken out of their hands, unfortunately.
well, do you hope that then the government steps in and starts working on something that's more strategic, right? I mean, no, I'm just saying, like, because there's really no other, like,
well, yeah. I mean, I think I'd like to think that the solution is to like be able to have honest conversations about like where this is going and like getting more people aware that like it's fucked up, for lack of a better term, and like it being okay saying that. You know, like one of the things that came up when we brought Ozempic up in the past is, you know, we've talked about in the past, and you know, maybe the take was a little extreme back then or whatever, and people are kind of like, oh my God, can't believe you said that, and then they have an issue with it. We just need to have conversations. Like the reason that I've changed my stance on this being a tool is because I've had conversations with people that reach out and are like, hey, here's my experience with it, here's what it used. I think that like that is the benefit. The benefit is just being able to have discourse around, hey, there are definitely pros to this, but look at all these cons, and the cons can be real while the pros are also real at the same time. We just need to have an honest conversation about it, not be like,
major con right now is,
oh, you said this, and
the major con, just how pervasive these things are becoming, and how low barrier to entry the solution is for even somebody who is very close to whatever shape they want to be in, and they're using it to get there.
Or what's the end game?
Quickly.
MBV?
Yeah. Well, the end game is money. The end game.
No. I mean for the individual. I'd reflect on like what's the end game for me, because you'd have to create some parameters, right? Like because what happens to quite a few people is that they'll use it, and then they'll get off, and then it'll come back. And so like, how do you hold yourself accountable to use as a tool to get to where you want to be? And then also do all these other things. I think that's where the issue is.
That can happen with a lot of things though too,
Of
right?
course.
That can happen with types of diets or nutrition programs or fitness programs that you follow and adhere to, and then you go back to your old ways. So are we really just talking about issues with discipline and lifestyle at some point? You know, one of the things that I think is really got to change is the fact that we are one of two countries that does allow pharmaceutical advertising to occur through broadcast airwaves. And I think that's
What other country allows it?
I think Australia. Australia. But
That sounds right.
some wild statistic that 75% of all marketing dollars are provided through pharmaceutical companies, which is a crazy thing to think about. I mean, every commercial that you watch during any sporting event, every commercial break, there's at least one advertisement. And the other thing, you know, not to make this all solely about weight loss drugs, but dude, erection pills are wildly advertised everywhere now. Dude, everybody walking around chewing blue chews all the time.
That must be on your feed, bro. I don't
on your desk, bro. Like, how many types of erection pills are there now that everybody's taking? It's not just Cialis and Viagra. There's all these, you know, more generic versions and these compounded medications and telehealth companies that are marketing these things as gummies and mints and chews and gums. And damn, it's attractive, right? It's like, oh,
US,
maybe I should pick some of that
New
up.
Zealand, just to clarify. So it's not
US and
Australia,
New
it's New Zealand.
Yes, sorry.
But hey, bro,
Australia,
I'm not seeing those same ads for the erection pill.
You're going to be seeing them now because your phone is probably on your desk. So you're going to pick up your phone in about 3
100%.
seconds and look.
Next
It's
thing
gonna be
you know-
the next thing he sees.
Having a hard. Oh, man.
Podcast is now sponsored by Blue Chew.
Is that a name? Bu- uh, this soon. Hey, sooner or later, what if a pharmaceutical company came and offered us 10 million to start advertising for you know, whatever?
It'd
I
be like
mean,
that scene in Wayne's World where I'm wearing a Pfizer T-shirt on the podcast.
yeah,
Dude, everything has a price. I'll change my tune on everything real
yeah.
quick.
Wait, what did you say? Oh yeah, no, we're good. Yeah, all that.
Yeah,
Put
no,
on
no,
a
no,
Pfizer hat really quickly.
no.
Oh man.
Oh no. I mean, money
What it, what it's
influences people in a weird way, right?
for sure, dude, for sure. And it's like it's easy when you're not getting the offers to be like, oh, I would never do that. Dude, there's a price. Row is the medication I needed. That's what Serena said in the commercial. Dude, Flex plus Row, bundle.
One of the
Bundle
interesting things about this, dude, is like, but how much do the people who are saying those things need it? They're just worldly recognized faces and individuals. Like Serena Williams, I don't know her exact financial situation, but I would probably think that she'd be fine if she didn't take money.
She's
from-
got to be worth hundreds of millions.
at least.
Her husband is a huge investor in Row and on the board for what.
Well, then that
Oh, yeah.
there you go, man. You got to stay loyal to your ride or die, dude.
There you go.
That's it. That's it. A funny, I was just remembering this when you were talking about the commercials. Funny side note that I remember from way back was when, I don't know, something was happening. I guess it's when they left the royal family, but when Meghan Markle and whoever she's married to were like dealing with all the controversy and were leaving the royal family, they were like going to leave Britain. They had that big Oprah interview. And the Oprah interview was only televised on the US, but obviously there were so many people in Europe that wanted to watch it. So they were watching the US stream. And actually, one of the things that went viral about all that was all these people from Europe were like, these are the commercials that you guys see? Like, this is insane. And all their commentary about the fact that literally every commercial was because when you're watching a show like Oprah, this is like, especially back then, it was like traditional, just like TV commercials, everything is a pharmaceutical ad. So if you go back and you see some of the comments from just people on Twitter from Europe just being like, it is insane that this is what you guys see on your commercial side, it's pretty funny because like for us, we've probably been desensitized to it,
Yeah.
right? Like it's the only thing we know. But when you're in a different country and you're like, this is what American TV is, like this is bananas. I remember that, yeah.
Dude, I
today-
completely sorry, Jay. I completely forgot about this. Did you guys see? I had never heard about the Metabo law in Japan. Have you guys heard about this?
No.
What's the Metabo law?
So I saw this pop up and I didn't know whether or not it was true or not, but Japan has a health law, the Metabo law, that mandates annual waist measurements for individuals aged 40 to 74 to combat metabolic syndrome, not to make obesity illegal. So men are limited to a 33.5 inches and women are to 35.4 inches. Exceeding these limits requires participation in counseling and potential follow-up with a dietitian. Employers are also required to ensure a percentage of their workers meet targets, facing fines if the goals aren't met. We have to dive into that at some point and fully look at the Metabo law in Japan. Crazy.
I don't even think I'd be able to. I think I'd be shunned. I'd have to be on some program because I think
They'd send you to
my-
counseling
I
right
wear
away.
a 34 pant waist, but I'm sure it's probably 33 and a half. Today is a Tuesday. We will record again on Friday, and we will update everybody on the Master Worlds. Hopefully, that's a good experience. We will see. But I am competing in 2 days. So, yeah, that's my end of the kind of podcast talk. We'll hit it on Friday. But if you guys, are part of the podcast ecosystem, if you're part of the Train Hard community and you are not on our Train Hard app, I really, truly believe you're missing out on a special piece of what we're doing. And, we've seen so many men and some women get in the best shape of their life using our programs. So if you're not there, check out the podcast show notes, join us for a free week, hit up the community section, let us know who you are, let us know where you're coming from, and let us help you get to where you want to be. And, we want to be your resource. So continue to listen to the podcast, continue to join us on the newsletter that goes out every week. But most importantly, join us on the Train Hard app because that's where you have daily programs that will help you get super, super fit, super capable, reduce fat, gain some muscle, and feel like a total badass. So, gentlemen,
Yeah.
until Friday, that's all I got. Have a good day, everybody.